today, for our big topic, I really wanted to continue our exploration of authenticity and self-esteem, but this time by looking at people pleasing, because people pleasing to me seems to be like the opposite of authenticity and the killer of self-esteem. And it's something that I think all of us do from time to time, but it's also something that can become habitual and become our primary way of coping with life. And just in my practice and as a human being, I see it all the time. And I certainly I guess I would say I'm a recovering people pleaser. So I thought I could speak to it from my own experience and perspective, and also as a coach, and just share some of the stuff that I've learned about people pleasing. So without further ado, people pleasing. So we find our way to people pleasing as a habit one of two ways. One is that we really might be lacking self-worth, and so we people please in hopes that others will accept and like us. And that kind of just makes sense, right? Like if we're looking for our self-esteem to come from outside of ourselves, then how other people treat us is either going to give us self-esteem or take it away. So as long as we've given that power away, we're going to have the tendency to people please. People who have this as a habit of their primary way of coping in life, oftentimes that habit develops because they, as kids, had really highly critical parents. Just really, really highly critical parents. Another way we find ourselves falling into this habit of people pleasing is from a history of being abused or mistreated. And so in order to survive, we became people pleasers. And if they like me, they'll treat me well, right? Or if they like me, if my dad likes me today, he won't get mad, or however the version went for that person. So again, we all from time to time do things to please the people in our lives. I think it is a very effective coping habit or coping skill. It's when it becomes a habit that it really starts to damage our life. So it undermines our self-worth. It does damage and even destroys our relationships. It really prevents us from living authentically. And so we miss out on all the stuff that authenticity gives us, like self-esteem, the fulfillment of our unique potential, and the joy. It robs us of the joy and the satisfaction that being ourselves can bring us, right? So, and let me know, if at any time you guys have a question, join in chat. So, according to Amy Morin, she's a psychotherapist and a clinical social worker, you might be a people pleaser if, okay, so here's a list. You pretend to agree to everyone. You feel responsible for how other people feel. You apologize often. You feel burdened by the things you have to do. You can't say no, or you have a really hard time saying no. You feel uncomfortable if someone is angry at you. You act like the people around you. You need praise to feel good. You go to great lengths to avoid conflict, and you don't admit when your feelings are hurt. So I bet we can all identify with some of them. So it doesn't mean that because you do one of these things, you are a people pleaser. It's not a diagnostic tool. It's just a way to, the more of those you check off, maybe the more likely it is that people pleasing is something that you've built into a habit. So something really interesting that came up when I was thinking about this and researching it that I had never appreciated before. So many people pleasers confuse people pleasing with kindness, and saying no feels selfish or bad. And that's a very powerful perspective that people pleasers can be trapped in. And until they start to see that perspective isn't accurate, they might not be willing to change their behavior. So definitely for the rest of this cast, one of the things I'm trying to do is help shift that perspective and show you that people pleasing isn't kindness, and that saying no isn't selfish, and it doesn't mean that you're a bad person. So one of the ways that I'm going to start by unraveling that a bit is by showing you a video. I love doing that on this stream. People have put out such amazing content that is really, really helpful. So I always, every week, I try to curate the best of the topic we have. So I'm going to show you something there. And, okay, let me make sure I'm over to the right. Yeah, I am. Okay, so here we go. It's, by the way, the video is good, but I found the animation to be creepy. So enjoy.
Information.
Being someone who pleases people sounds, on the face of it, like a very good idea. But it's a pattern of behavior riddled with problems, as much for the perpetrator as for their audience. The people pleaser is someone, who might at times be oneself, who feels they have no option but to mould themselves to the expectations of others, and yet harbours all manner of secret and at points dangerous reservations and resentments. They act like the perfect lover when their real feelings are much darker. They give their assent to plans they hate, and they confuse everyone around them by failing to express in due time, with the requisite courage, their authentic needs and ambitions. Putting it bluntly, we could say that the people pleaser is a liar. It sounds brutal, but the people pleaser is lying for poignant reasons, not in order to gain advantage, but because they are terrified of the displeasure of others. To understand and potentially sympathize with the people pleaser, we need to look at their past, which almost invariably involves an early experience of being around people, usually a mother or father, who seem to be radically and terrifyingly incapable of accepting and forgiving certain necessary but perhaps tricky facts about their child. Perhaps our father flew into volcanic rage at any sign of disagreement, to present an opposing political idea, to suggest we wanted something different to eat, to be frank about our tiredness or anxiety. All these could threaten us with annihilation. To survive, we needed to be acutely responsive to what others expected us to do and say. The very question of what we might really want became secondary to an infinitely more important priority, manically second-guessing the desires of those on whom at that time our lives depended. We didn't always lie out of fear. It was also often out of love for someone we were profoundly attached to, but who was vulnerable in some way. We lied out of a longing not to set off another marital row, a desire to keep a depressive parent in a good mood, and to avoid adding a further burden to what seemed like an already very difficult or sad life. Who were we to make things even more complicated for a fragile person we cared for? However understandable the origins of our behavior, in the more reflexive moments of adulthood, we might find three paths out from these difficult patterns of people-pleasing. The first relies on reminding ourselves that our colleagues, partners, and friends are almost certainly very different from the people around whom our anxieties evolved in childhood. Most humans can cope quite well with a bit of contradiction, a dose of unwelcome information, or an occasional rejection, delivered with requisite politeness. The other is not going to explode or dissolve. We learned a very particular habit of relating to the world around a group of people who were not representative of humanity as a whole. Secondly, we need to acknowledge the inadvertently harmful side effects of our behavior. We may genuinely have good intentions, but we are endangering everyone by not speaking more frankly. At work, we aren't doing anyone a service by withholding our doubts and reservations. And in love, there is no kindness in staying in a relationship simply because it seems the other might not survive without us. They will, but we will have wasted a lot of their time through our sentimentality. Finally, we can acquire the confidence to be artful about the difficult messages we have to impart. As a child, we couldn't nuance the messages we wanted to send out. We didn't know how to craft our raw pain and needs into convincing explanations. But now, It's open to us to be firm in our views, but extremely genial as well. We can say no while indicating that we feel a lot of goodwill. We can say someone is wrong without implying that they are an idiot. We can leave someone while ensuring they realize how much a relationship meant to us. We can, in other words, be pleasant without being people pleasers.
We partnered with
Did
Skillshare
anybody
today,
else
which is a
find that
fantastic
creepy?
start.
I mean, informative, but creepy, right? Yeah, I don't know. There's something about, like, not, like, there's things that didn't make sense. Like, why is he riding a swan? And then the house shaking seemed just, like, creepy. Anyways, yeah, so one of the, like, my biggest takeaways from that was this idea. Oh, it is? It is always creepy? Okay, because that's the first time I've seen a School of Life video. Yes, it must be the same animators that do it. Yeah. So I, like, one of the big things that, like, yeah, the voice for sure. Yeah, the voice, and, like, then he was, like, riding an alligator boat. I don't know why they, like, I wonder if they could make it less creepy if people would, like, respond to the learning better. I don't know. Maybe the creepiness helps it set in. Because we remember scary, bad things better than positive things. Yeah, so what stood out to me was this idea that when we people please, we're actually lying to people. And I never really appreciated the magnitude of that. Like, I guess, like, I always, when I was doing it, I knew I wasn't being completely honest, but I don't even think I would have gone as far to label it a white lie. So to, like, recognize it as an actual lie, which is an even bigger degree of lying, like, is surprised me. And yet I can see the point of what they meant. So, let's see. Yeah, so some of the, like, common misunderstandings and mistakes of people pleasers are, like, that they mistake pleasing for kindness. So pleasing is fear-based, and it really exists and comes out of the ego, whereas kindness happens when you go beyond yourself or step outside of yourself, and you give with non-attachment. So you give without, like, an expectation of getting something in return. Does that make sense? I think so. Yeah. I'm trying to think if there's another way to, like, explain it. Yeah, so I mean, really just the difference between people-pleasing and actual kindness is where it's coming from. So one is coming from this desire, this need to be accepted and loved, and the other is coming from non-desire, like this altruistic action. Yeah, that's actually a rabbit hole we could argue about whether or not altruism exists, but that's another day. Yeah, it is. Yeah. So absolutely, Duder Nico, like, we people please when we're not comfortable with confrontation, or we're not comfortable with the emotions that often are around confrontation, like anger, or even sadness. And for sure. So part of how to, like, break the habit of people pleasing is to develop a sense that you can handle those negative emotions and you can handle those situations. And even if, like, they don't go well, like, I don't mean handle it skill wise, although that can be really helpful, but even if they don't go well, that you're going to be okay. That there's a core inside of you that, like, nobody can really touch or hurt. So that can really help with the fear of confrontations. Oh, okay, bye. I don't know much. Have a good time. Have a good day. Thanks for listening for a little bit. Yeah, so, and then that they also are blind to this idea that they're lying, right? And that there's really this lack of authenticity. When you're just going along with the flow and you're changing your opinions to match what you think somebody wants you to hear, like you're lying about who you are. You're misrepresenting yourself at the very least, and then your words could be a direct lie. Hi, Mrs. Scott Evans. Welcome. Welcome. Yeah, so we're talking about people pleasing and how it's the opposite of authenticity and how it can kill our self-esteem. So, yeah, when you're lacking that authenticity and you're lying about who you are and about what you feel and what you want and what you need, like nobody gets to know the real you. In fact, you don't even get to know the real you. Everything is just disconnected. And you don't get to fulfill your potential, right? Like there's nobody else in the world like you. You will never exist again. So if you live your life people pleasing, you're also robbing everybody of whatever gift could have come from your authenticity. The other thing that, and I don't know if this comes from anybody else. I think this was just my idea, because this is the way that I was able to break my own habit of people pleasing. It was where I got my biggest shift. Was I realized that when I'm busy people pleasing and trying to fix everybody or fix their problems, what I'm doing is I'm disempowering them, because I'm robbing them of the opportunity to learn how to take care of themselves. And even more than that, there's this like really insidious thing where if you come to me with a problem, or I notice you have one and I try to fix it for you, not only am I robbing you of that opportunity to do it for yourself, but by doing it, by saying yes, there's like this subterranean communication, which is I don't believe you're capable of solving your own problem. And that's really fucking toxic. It can be really toxic for everybody involved. Like, right? So like as a people pleaser, I thought, wow, aren't I nice? Like I'm helping people and I'm showing them that I love them and I'm taking care of them. And then I was like, oh no, I've been robbing them of their own power this whole time. And that hurt me. That made me really sad. And that was enough for me to go, I'm ready now. I'm ready to not continue doing this pattern. So Upright Oracle, you're saying, yeah, it reminds you of being a kid and saying you like something to be cool. Yes. Yeah. Like it's really common, right? Like, you know, probably everybody does this from time to time, for sure. It's only when it's like a repeated habit that it can really start to hold us back in life. Yeah, so you also like, if you're a chronic people pleaser, you can experience a tremendous amount of discomfort within relationships. So again, it's like, who's the real you? Both parties are getting confused. There can be a lopsided power and a lopsided sharing of the work, whereas the people pleaser starts to take on too many of the responsibilities. And over time, resentment can build. The people pleaser could get really, really resentful or angry about the unbalanced workload or the imbalanced power. The relationship can become abusive. Yeah, that all can happen. So chronic people pleasers are also often very anxious people. And to me, that makes sense, because when you are constantly looking for people, like to please people so they validate your sense of self-worth, whether or not that validation becomes your lifeline. And if you don't have it, you're not worthy of love and belonging. Oh, he's gonna stop. Can you guys hear that? That makes me so happy. Good boy, Rocky. That's my brother's dog, Rockadoodles. It is. He's a little wolf. He's real little. He's a little Boston Terrier, but when he hears I'm so happy I have that recorded. I wanted to record his little for like years, and I've never gotten to. But yeah, when he hears fire engines, he does that sound. It's so cute. Otherwise, he's just a barker, and it's real annoying. Not as cute. Here, I'll go grab him so you guys can see him. One sec. See if he'll let me. Oh, Rocky! Do. Say hi! Oh, right there. You want to howl now? No, you're just gonna burp? Oh, I hear the fire engine. No, he's not gonna do it. Puppy! Good boy! Alright. That was adorbs. Hopefully I'll never say adorbs again. As soon as it came out of my mouth. Didn't like it. Yay, puppy! Yes! Oh, that was a fun distraction. So where were we? Yeah, so you can have a lot of more anxiety in your life than what's necessary. And I talked a little about this, but a chronic people pleaser has given control of their self-esteem completely away. They've taken what should exist within themselves, where they have 100% control over, and they were just like, no, somebody else take care of it. And it doesn't work out well. It really doesn't. And it's interesting because in this one sense, they've given their control away. But in the overall sense, people pleasing is about controlling. It's about controlling the other person's reaction to you or the reactions that they're having in life. It's about controlling your environment so that you feel safe, right? Like it's a coping mechanism that's become a chronic tool of control. So there's kind of this dichotomy of I control things in the big sense, but in the internal sense, I've given all that control away to somebody else who doesn't deserve it. Nobody deserves to be in charge of your self-esteem. And that's a terrible, a really harsh burden to put on anybody, right? It doesn't lead to happy, healthy relationships when that happens. And Dieter Nieho talked about the fear of conflict and the negative emotions that conflict can bring up. So people pleasers tend to avoid conflict. I still tend to avoid conflict. It's a challenge. I have to choose not to do it. But here's the thing about that I don't think we've talked about yet. When somebody is avoiding conflict, they're stunting their growth. So unfortunately / fortunately, I don't know, conflict is one of those things where, and I don't mean physical conflict. I'm not encouraging anybody to get into fights or, let somebody hit them or anything like that, right? I'm simply talking about the day-to-day interpersonal conflict we can have in relationships where words are exchanged but not fists, right? So when you avoid the hard conversations, the challenging moments, you don't get to learn, you don't get to grow, and your relationship doesn't get to change. Most change comes from struggle, and it comes from getting uncomfortable, so you stay stuck. And conflict is an opportunity to it is exactly like the Fuck It Bucket, Upright Oracle. Yes, and I have a way for retooling the Fuck It Bucket to help with overcoming people pleasing that I'm going to share in a little bit. But every moment of discomfort, which conflict is an opportunity to build your resilience, right? To build that muscle. And when you don't do it, you're making your future life harder. Because eventually you're gonna have to face conflict, and you might as well use the opportunities that come your way that are smaller to develop the skills and the resiliency you're gonna want to have on hand when a real conflict comes at you down the line. So, yeah. Okay. So, as per usual, I've curated a list of quotes that I'm excited about. So, let's see. Let's dive into the quotage. Harriet B. Breaker says, niceness is the psychological armor of the people pleaser. Yeah, I mean, that sounds true to me based off of what I've learned. You know, that it's like you use niceness to protect yourself and control your environment so that you don't get hurt. Althea Luna says, that's a great name. Althea Luna says, at first, people-pleasing might come across as a selfless act. But people-pleasing is actually a selfish act, here we go, because you're trying to control someone else's reaction towards you by behaving in a certain way. So that we've talked about quite a bit now. And she also goes on to say that people-pleasing is more about the desire to be in control than it is to please other people. Yeah, like that keeps jumping out at me because I as a people pleaser, I just had a completely different perspective, right? Like my belief was that, oh, I was being kind, I was being selfless, I was being a good person. And it's not that I wasn't a good person, but I wasn't being selfless. I wasn't really being kind either. And that's a big eye opener for me. Yeah, me too, Mrs. Scott Evans. This whole notion of it being about control. And like it makes so much sense because I think back to why somebody becomes a chronic people pleaser, and it's because they had a really critical parent that was like almost impossible to please and get that sense of worth and belonging out of, or they were, mistreated or abused. And yeah, you're going to want to find any way you can to control your life, right? And so it makes sense that as kids, this is what some of us have developed in order to cope. Yeah. So another one, Andrea Matthews says that this is not a problem of self-esteem. This is a problem of not having any connection with a self whom we can learn to esteem. People pleasers at their most extreme are so identified with the look on the faces of significant others that they do not even notice the feelings thundering for attention inside their own hearts and minds. Wow, like that one got me in my heart. Yeah, this idea that it's a step, it's like pre-self-esteem, right? Like it's like you can't even have self-esteem yet because you're ignoring yourself. So until you start acknowledging your thoughts and your feelings, you can't even build actual self-esteem. And that what you have is this fake self-esteem that you're relying on other people to do for you. Yeah, so interesting. Albert Einstein, he says that without deep reflection, one knows from daily life that one exists for other people. Without deep reflection, one knows from daily life that one exists for other people. This one's interesting. It's a little counterintuitive, but what I think he's saying is that on the surface, it looks like our purpose is to get along and to facilitate everybody getting what they need. But the key here is like he's basically saying, if you take the time to deeply reflect, you know that you don't exist for other people, that you exist for yourself. Yeah. Right? Like it's a little bit more tricky, but I think that's what he's saying. What do you guys think? So Deuter Niho, yeah, I think that's quite naturally develops as varying degrees through childhood. Yeah. something good, we get rewarded. We did something bad, we sometimes get negative consequences. When we please our parents, we get rewarded, I think. Yeah, for the most part, when we please, we do get rewarded. And if that's the only time that you're getting a positive from your parents, that's what becomes the primary focus, is this idea that, oh, I have to please in order to be worthy, in order to be liked. And that's just not true. It's not true in the adult world. So Abiola Abrams says, people-pleasing doesn't allow you to receive. People-pleasing doesn't allow you to receive. Yeah, I wonder about this one. I mean, is she saying that in a relationship, if you're not showing up as your authentic self, you can't really like receive back like actual like love? In a way, I see that could be true. Can somebody really love you if they don't know you? If they're not seeing your authentic self, or if you're not showing it, and can you love yourself and have self-love if you're not acknowledging your real thoughts and your feelings and your needs? Oh, interesting. Mrs. Scott Evans says she takes it as you can't be a receiver of pleasing. Others can't please you if your goal is to please others. Yeah, it's kind of like, I wonder if there's ever been a relationship ever that consisted of two like chronic people pleasers. I mean, in a comedy, but I think in real life it wouldn't, like, it really wouldn't work. I think that people pleasing attracts people who probably are repeating the pattern of the childhood, right? Like either a really critical, controlling parent, or a person who will mistreat you or maybe abuse you. But yeah, I think it'd be kind of funny to have to see a scene where there's two people pleasers trying to please each other. Oh, you know what comes to mind is that really annoying thing that happens when we're with friends and we're all trying to decide where we're gonna go to eat, and nobody's like, I want to eat here. Everybody's like, oh, you decide, I'm good with whatever. And even when you're like, what kind of food do you like? They're like, I just like food. Yeah, that's a whole bunch of people pleasers. Nobody wanting to own up to what they actually want. I think in that situation, I'm trying to organize it because that's my way of controlling it without having to say what I want. Ooh, it just keeps going. Yeah, see, that's exactly what I've been doing. I've been just listing places and then asking them to say yes or no and going from there. It's still really annoying. There's got to be a better way to do that. I wonder if there could be an app for making those really repetitive group decisions. Yeah, interesting. Okay, so Veronica Tugaleva says that if you find yourself craving approval, you are low on self-love. Stop grasping for a few scraps wherever you can. Go home and make yourself a feast. Love yourself deeply today. That's nice. It says, if you find yourself craving approval, you are low on self-love. Stop grasping for a few scraps wherever you can. Go home and make yourself a feast. Love yourself deeply today. I love it. Oh, so that brings to mind, the title for today's cast is Pleasing Yourself Away. And I was wondering if I needed, this, a little disclaimer, this is not about pleasuring yourself, right? Not about masturbation. Yeah. It is about people pleasing and how when we do that, we lose our authenticity and our self-esteem. Tiki Maher. She's not talking about binge eating. Not talking about binge eating. I am pretty confident in that. Emily P. Freeman says, we may call it people-pleasing, but it is entirely self-serving because it is really all about keeping myself comfortable. Boiled down, it could be more accurately called me-pleasing. This may be one of my favorites, if not the favorite. We may call it people-pleasing, but it is entirely self-serving because it is really all about keeping myself comfortable. Boiled down, it could be more accurately called me-pleasing. Again, shifting the perspective, I think, is so powerful. And when we're able to do that, when we're able to see how our thinking has kept us stuck, we break the power of that belief, and room is created for a new belief that actually serves us, right? So it's this idea of no, I'm being kind, and when I say no, it's selfish, breaking that and realizing that by saying no, you're being kind, right? And being selfish is continuing people pleasing because you're doing it to control the situation. You're doing it to please yourself, to keep yourself safe. You're really manipulating the other person. So that's huge. That's huge when we actually have this shift. And part of me is hesitating right now because I'm wow, I just used the words manipulating and controlling and selfish, and that can have a lot of judgment attached to it, negative judgment. And I am in no way, shape, or form judging anybody who people pleases or has a habit of people pleasing. And I'm really hoping that if you're recognizing yourself in this, you're not adding on to it this negative self-judgment, because this is a completely normal, very understandable pattern that a whole hell of a lot of people fall into. And okay. So that being said, by the way, I love overweight with love. Yes, that's what I'm talking about. We don't need to label ourselves as good or bad, right? We can have attributes, but it's the way we feel about them that can be so toxic. Same with this. If you see yourself in these words of people pleasing, it can cause toxicity in your life. It does not mean in any shape or form that you are toxic. Okay. So Beverly Engel says, children who feel unloved and unprotected are like a half-filled cup. They become incapable of filling up because they have come to believe they are unworthy of love. They try to please others, give to others, and care for others in a desperate hope that they may make themselves worthy. Yeah, that's going right back to how this comes up for people in their childhood. So I'm going to read it again. Children who feel unloved and unprotected are like a half-filled cup. They become incapable of filling up because they have come to believe they are unworthy of love. They try to please others, give to others, and care for others in a desperate hope that they may make themselves worthy. Right? Man, it hits my heart too. Yeah. And it reminds me of what we've been we talked about last week with self-esteem, but it's we have to take responsibility back for our self-esteem, right? And when we do that, our worthiness becomes an immutable truth about who we are, and nothing we do, nothing anybody else does can touch that immutable core of worth. But as long as we put it outside of ourselves, we get into real trouble. For sure. Yeah, and yeah. Whenever I hear about children, it just is oh, children. Love you, children. Don't get hurt. Grow up perfectly. It's not possible, but that's where my heart goes. Okay, so I feel like I had something else to say about that one. I also wonder, so, the child is desperately hoping, right? Serving in desperate hopes that they'll be given their self-worth in return. But there's something that's like nagging at me about when we're doing that, when we're like constantly people pleasing, we're also like somehow robbing the other person of their self-worth. Like we're trying to, in a way, be responsible for it. I have not connected the dots on that thought. But I think it has to do with this idea that I said earlier, which is if you're always trying to fix other people's problems, you rob them of their own power, their own self-efficacy. And if someone doesn't have a sense of their own efficacy and their own power, they're likely not to take responsibility for their self-worth. There's the complete thought. I did it. Huzzah. Yes. All right. Reshma Saujani, I wish I could say these names, says, we've become conditioned to compromise and shrink ourselves in order to be liked. The problem is when you work so hard to get everyone to like you, you very often end up not liking yourself very much. Oh, we become conditioned to compromise and shrink ourselves in order to be liked. The problem is when you work so hard to get everyone to like you, you very often end up not liking yourself so much. Yeah, I agree. It also like reinforces this idea that I have that we've got this inner voice, right? This inner voice of truth, like what's true for me right now in this moment. And it's like that voice is what gives us a handle on what's really important to us in life, like what our values are. It's the voice of our authentic self. And man, when you don't listen to it enough, let's put it this way, when I haven't listened to it enough, I haven't liked myself very much because I'm not in integrity. There's like an integrity alarm that I feel. So Deuterniho says, I think it's disrespectful to the other as if they, can handle the truth or deal with it and capable of respecting our perspective. Yeah, it is. It is kind of this cycle of like mutual disrespect can happen, right? And that for sure, how does that lead to like wonderful, the kinds of relationships that we all want, right? Like, no, you want it to be mutually respectful. You want people to be on like an even playing field and to be equally supportive. You don't want to rob each other of your power. You don't want to give it away. You don't want to take it. Yes. Okay. Yes. So Upright Oracle also has the integrity alarm. It is. It's like, I just told a lie. I don't really understand maybe yet how I told a lie, but I've got that feeling that I just did. And if I don't take the time to then like unpack it, it just reinforces the lying habit. Yeah, that saying that it's like lying is a really helpful word for me. Okay. Ed Sheeran says, I can't tell you the key to success, but the key to failure is trying to please everyone. Yeah, that makes me think of that example of when I'm trying to get people to go out and eat dinner and just choose a place to eat. Like, the more we're all trying to please each other, the more frustrating the whole situation becomes, and then dinner isn't very enjoyable and everybody's kind of grumpy. So too in like an individual situation, like trying to please like the thing is you can't possibly please everybody. You can't possibly please everybody. You're just setting yourself up for failure for sure. It isn't possible. It isn't. Yeah, and like part of yes, Tiki Maher, that works great. I think maybe part of like breaking out of people pleasing is to know your priorities, right? Like get super clear on what your key priorities are. And that can be used to help make these decisions, right? Because you're going to have to basically decide, okay, I can't please everybody. So who do I please this time, right? Is it myself? Is it my husband? Is it my parent? Like, you know what I mean? Like, so having some sort of priority can really help make that judgment call. I really like this quote too. Eleanor Roosevelt. You wouldn't worry so much about what others think of you if you realized how seldom they do. So true. So true. You wouldn't worry so much about what others think of you if you realized how seldom they do. Right? Yeah. She was a smart cookie. I would have liked to have known her, I think. So Paulo Coelho says, when you say yes to others, make sure you aren't saying no to yourself. When you say yes to others, make sure you aren't saying no to yourself. He has such a great way of getting to the heart of things very quickly. Because isn't that what we're talking about, right? People pleasing is saying yes to others and no to yourself all the time. I think I might be butchering this name. We had a great quote from him last week shared in chat. But Lao Tzu, the Chinese philosopher, I'm getting really quiet as I whisper that. He says, care about what other people think and you will always be their prisoner. Care about what other people think and you will always be their prisoner. Yes. Yes. He is great. Deuternico, he is great. And it's, again, like another person who's able to like cut right to the heart of it. Care about what other people think and you will always be their prisoner. That's what I'm saying. And one way that's happening is your self-worth. Like you've given your self-esteem to somebody else. And that doesn't come back unless you demand it and take it. You have to fight for it, right? And the quote we got last week that was shared in chat is also applicable here, so I'll read it. But it's because one believes in oneself, one doesn't try to convince others. Because one is content with oneself, one doesn't need others' approval. Because one accepts oneself, the whole world accepts him or her. Yeah. Because one believes in oneself, one doesn't try to convince others. Because one is content with oneself, one doesn't need others' approval. Because one accepts oneself, the whole world accepts him or her. Yeah, it's that very last part that I still like struggle with a little bit. Because one accepts oneself, the whole world accepts him or her. But the way I'm looking at it now is with that integrity piece and that like lie detector that goes off in ourselves. There is something about when you like get really authentic and you start living your life from your authenticity, and in essence you're answering the call to adventure, right, on a hero's journey by saying yes to your authentic self and just going on life on the adventure that your authenticity takes you on, not knowing where you're going, not knowing what you're going to create, but just trusting that what you create will be your unique gift, right? Like when you act out of authenticity, there is this sense of the whole world accepting you back because doors open. People connect to you in a very real way that is rare otherwise. So yeah, I that's how I understand how the whole world can accept you when you are just being you and you're done convincing others that you're worthy. You just are worthy. Let's see. Eileen Strauss Cohen says, as a people pleaser, your instinct to relieve the presence of any discomfort in yourself and others is driving your life. As a people pleaser, your instinct to relieve the presence of any discomfort in yourself and others is driving your life. Yeah. Yeah, if you're not aware of this and it's just a habit that's running unchecked, it is in the driver's seat for sure. And again, like Upright Oracle mentioned, it is like, this is where the fuck it bucket can be of help. In fact, I don't know if I have that capability. Nope. Oh well, I'll figure it out later. I was gonna add my little fuck it bucket graphic, but I don't know how because I'm in Streamlabs. Yeah, so like building up your resilience to discomfort can help people break past the habit of people pleasing. So just do your best to do something every day that makes you uncomfortable. Look for it in your everyday life and say yes to it whenever you can. And then if you don't have it come up naturally, create a fuck it bucket and draw an uncomfortable action out of it and do it. Do it once a day and see how it changes things. Aesop says, if you try to please all, you please no one. So that's another way of saying the quote we had a couple times ago. Aristotle says, there's only one way to avoid criticism. Do nothing, say nothing, be nothing. There's only one way to avoid criticism. Do nothing, say nothing, be nothing. Yeah. Viggo Mortensen. I love that I can follow Aristotle with Viggo Mortensen. He says, if you're trying to please everyone, then you're not going to make anything that is honestly yours. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. We've all got this unique gift that only comes from our authenticity. So if you're trying to please everyone, then you're not going to make anything that is honestly yours. Shannon L. Alder says, when you stop living your life based on what others think of you, real life begins. At that moment, you finally see the door of self-acceptance opened. Sounds so nice. When you stop living your life based on what others think of you, real life begins. At that moment, you will finally see the door of self-acceptance opened. And then my last quote, which I saved because it's my favorite, and it's from Jim Carrey. He says, your need for acceptance can make you invisible in this world. Don't let anything stand in the way of the light that shines through this form. Risk being seen in all your glory. Your need for acceptance can make you invisible in the world. Don't let anything stand in the way of the light that shines through this form. Risk being seen in all your glory. Yeah, don't hide. Don't hide behind people pleasing. Yes. So what can be done about this? So Eileen Strauss Cohen wrote a book, if you're interested. It's got a long title. It's When It's Never About You, The People Pleaser's Guide to Reclaiming Your Health, Happiness, and Personal Freedom. If you have access to my stream notes, you will have a hyperlink to that book. Yes. It has more meaning, you're right, coming from Jim Carrey, because he is so out there, right? Like, I've never gotten the sense that guy hides at all. Like, he is just letting his authenticity out to really great results for him. And I've benefited from him doing that. So yeah. But anyway, so that's a book, and she lists 7 basic things that you can do to shift out of being a people pleaser. So becoming more aware of yourself and getting really curious about what's going on with you, what you think, what you feel, what you want, and approaching it with respect instead of judgment and denial. Realizing that also doing too much hurts your relationships, right? Like we talked about. Understanding the importance of being yourself, right? The authenticity piece. And, you know, if your people pleasing has come from, like, you're like, yes, I identify with these childhood causes. One idea that might help you is to let it go as much as you can. And the reason is that if you're holding on to what happened to you and what people did to you, what it might mean about you, in a way, you've accepted that negative belief. So by holding on to what happened, you're adopting the belief, that negative belief about yourself that they projected onto you. And if you can let it all go, you can like loosen it up and maybe let go of that negative belief that you've taken on that doesn't belong there. That sounds like something that therapy might be really good at helping. Hi, Dragons VK8. Welcome. Yeah, I'm describing my life too. So welcome to the party, for sure. Happy to have you. So yeah, another thing you can do to help shift out of people pleasing is just realizing that when you choose to avoid problems, right, or uncomfortable emotions, you're not letting yourself grow. That you're not, and that in the future, things are just going to be harder for you because you aren't growing and getting more powerful. So we've talked about that one a little bit. Here's something that could be really powerful. You can make a decision whether or not you want to be loved and to love, or if you want to be a prisoner to love. Okay? And the difference is one requires courage and the setting of boundaries. That's the one that lets you be loved as you are authentically. The other one, the people-pleasing route, is just one where you're building this prison around yourself. Some pretty big stuff there. And there's inevitable anxiety, right? That comes up for you because I'm saying, hey guys, lean into the conflict, lean into the uncomfortable feelings. Well, that's very naturally going to be bringing you some anxiety. And something that you might find helpful is when you realize you're making a decision and anxiety is involved, you probably aren't being true to what you really want. So like if you let your fear drive your decision, chances are you're ignoring your authentic voice. So let me think of a example. So I was invited to a Super Bowl party and I had a lot of anxiety about going for various reasons, but it was, the typical anxiety that comes up because I have no control over the situation, and even less control because I've been working on my people-pleasing habit and not using it as much and just showing up more authentically. So I had a lot of anxiety, and I let that anxiety decide that I wasn't going. And I didn't go. I came up with like really good, legitimate reasons not to go. But at the core of it, it was because I was afraid. And I wasn't willing to lean into that fear in that time. And I really missed out because I know like my inner self, that authentic self, would have loved to have gone and would have had a great time. So yeah, so when fear's involved and you're running away, chances are it's an opportunity to do the other thing. And that other thing would be supporting your authentic self. If that makes sense. Yeah, overthinking everything. Yeah, I ruminate a lot. And that's something like I definitely want to explore on a future stream. Because it's totally a natural thing to do. And sometimes it's necessary, but so often it's not necessary and it doesn't serve us very well. So maybe this idea of anxiety as a decision-making tool, like, oh, I feel anxious. Does that mean the authentic thing is to go, right? Or to not go, right? That might help. That might help. Some ideas that aren't from her book, but that I really, really liked is, again, I've said this so much, but cultivate your self-worth from within. Stop looking for other people to do it for you. Take back that responsibility. And if you weren't there on our stream on self-esteem or authenticity, I do recommend it because we talk and explore a lot about how to take that responsibility back. And like Upright Oracle was saying, you can repurpose, like you can use the fuck it bucket. So what I would do for this, if you want to work on like getting rid of or changing your habit around people pleasing, is I would get your bucket, right? And I would take the uncomfortable actions out that we have. And then I would go get like something to fill this up with. So like marbles or pebbles or like lima beans or something, right? Something like that. And you want to choose something really special that you're going to do for yourself when your bucket gets full. Lucky for me, my bucket is little. It's a jar. It's not even a bucket. But what you then do is you're going to put that marble into your bucket every single time you say no to something, or you express your opinion about something, or you take a stand for something you believe in. Anytime you notice that you've done something authentic, right? That you didn't choose the people-pleasing route, you put the marble in. And it's great because it's super simple, but you get to start acknowledging and celebrating the wins that you're having. I mean, so often we don't do that. Like, all we're focused on is the times we didn't live up to the change we want to have. And our brains are already predisposed to focus on the negative, that it's really beneficial if we can do actions to reinforce the positive too. So that's a super simple way to do it. You can also, like I said, use it in the traditional sense and look for something. Did you guys hear that? The dog is making really weird sounds. Okay, he's done. Or you can use it in the traditional way. I hope you can hear that. Rocky. It does sound like a frog. You okay, Rockadoodles? Yeah. I think he was rolling on his back and going, rawr. Okay. Yeah. So look for something uncomfortable every day. Like, lean into it. Say yes whenever you have enough courage to do it. Don't beat yourself up if you don't. Just keep looking for those opportunities and, put a pebble in or whatever if you do that. Maybe have 2 buckets, one for pebbles and then one for uncomfortable actions. And when you don't find one in your life, reach in and take an uncomfortable action out and do it. Build up your resiliency over time, guys. Another thing you can do is work on changing your perspective, right? So you can choose to believe that you always have a choice. It's really hard to be serious when I have a dog frog in the background. Hi. Yeah, okay. Yeah, you can choose to believe that you always have a choice and that you're free to say no. You can choose to believe that I'm selfish when I say yes all the time, right? Like, however you want to frame it to shift your perspective. You can choose to believe that you can't take care of someone else unless you're taking care of yourself first. Because these are all things that are true, right? It's just you have to choose. Oh, yes. Hi, Panda230209. My headset is actually a normal size. I just have a tiny head. It's true. It's true. I've looked for a headset for a child, and yeah, this is it. This is it for now. But yeah, my head is very small. It's very, very true. So you can change your perspective. And so another one you can do is you can start to acknowledge and believe that people pleasing is selfish, that it's not selfless. And it kind of in that vein, I look like your teacher. Yeah, that's possible. Yeah. I used to be an actor, and I was always the generic, girl next door. Generic white girl. That was me. My name is Catherine. It's close. Yeah, so in that vein of changing your perspective, you can take on some mantras. So, an example, I've heard this from a lot of people at this point, but you can go if it's not a hell yes, it's a hell no, and that can help you make a decision. Her real name is Catherine. Well, I've never been a teacher. So, but the world is really small and full of coincidences. For sure. Yeah, so if it's not a hell yes, it's a hell no. You could say to yourself, I choose truth over lies. Real kindness is letting others grow. I no longer run from conflict. I am ready. I am resilient and can handle anything. Really, so and like make one that's personal for yourself, right? And you want to state it in positive words, and you want to, as much as you can, make it an I statement or true about you, and not something that you have to believe is true about other people. But yeah, like take anything that you found to like crack, like put a crack in your people pleasing habit, and take that insight and change it into like change your perspective around it, and write it, like create a mantra just to help you remember this new perspective shift. Yes. Oh, yeah, you're debating on asking someone out. Oh, yeah, that happens. For sure. For sure. I bet chat could have some advice for you. Yeah, there we go. There we go. Yeah, I'm not very good at the advice part. I asked somebody out one time when I was 17, and we're married, so it went really well. But I don't have a whole lot of experience in that arena. Yeah, so Mrs. Scott Evans, brilliant. So yeah, when we're, it's called catastrophizing. When we're thinking over and over and over again about the worst case, like, oh my, okay, so let's take this example. Like, if I ask her out, right? Exactly. You wouldn't. If you knew it was going to lead to, like, instant marriage, you wouldn't ask him out. No, probably not. But yeah, yeah, so let's apply this. So Dragons VK8, what's the worst case scenario you're worrying might happen, right? And then do what Mrs. Scott Evans says and ask yourself if you can live through it. Is it worth it? I would add to that, how likely is that outcome? Because most of the time, when we're coming up with a worst case scenario, it's really, really unlikely. And you can actually do a thought experiment and list the worst case scenarios, and then the best case scenarios, and then the likely scenarios. But there's something about going to the real negative, going to the real positive, that helps you see the reality of what probably will happen. And then it's less scary. Yeah, I'm so glad you brought up that insight, because it's so true. Yeah, another thing, I think I mentioned this, worst case is she'll reject me and stop being friends with me, or think something weird of me, I guess. Yeah, so, I mean, you can, yeah, so, yes, I would say that, death is probably, in my opinion, the worst case scenario for anything. And that is the one thing that, actually dying, I am not ever going to be resilient about, right? So I can't ever say, I can handle absolutely everything, because, well, I'll die one day. But you can have a belief of resiliency, right? That includes everything but death. That you can bounce back or recover from anything else that happens. And that actually is how I broke out of my own people-pleasing habits, is I just realized that I'm really fucking resilient and can really overcome anything, especially as I continue to develop my resiliency. But yeah, so Dragons VK8, worst case scenario is she could reject you, she could stop being your friends, and she could say really weird things about you or think really weird things about you. I don't know, I just ask yourself how likely that is. And if you think it's really highly likely, I'd challenge you to come up with a way to ask her out that was less likely to produce those results. You know, if you are a total, creeper or something in the way you do it, maybe she'll think weird things about you. Right? But you can, lessen that probability a bit by, talking to people and coming up with different ways to ask her out, I suppose. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, the other thing is like no risk, no reward, right? But I feel like that's so pithy. I mean, selfishly, I hope you do ask her out and come back and let us know what happened. Yeah, so like in the scope of what we've been talking about with people pleasing, I found that it's really, really helpful to do your best to connect with the fact that you are resilient. And even if you don't think you can handle anything, right? Because imagine, like, if you really believed you could handle anything except death, right? If you could handle anything, then, like, how likely would it be that you would avoid a tough conversation with someone you care about? How likely would it be that you avoid, like, taking responsibility for something you did at work that you probably shouldn't have done? Or, right? Like, all these things that we, like, people please around. Or, like, how likely would you be to not voice your opinion, right? Like, no, you would do these things. You would be willing to be uncomfortable, and because you can handle it, right? Like, you can handle it. So even if, like, you don't believe that now, I just challenge you to look back on your life and like, just see all the things that you have handled, right? That you have overcome, that you did survive through. That's you. Like, it didn't just happen, right? You didn't just magically make it through everything you've made it through to get here. Like, that's you. You can own it. And there's also, like, a lot of skills and techniques that I'll be sharing through this cast that further build your resiliency. So even if you don't fully believe it today, like, all of us can learn resiliency, and we can all increase our resiliency. And my theory is that as that happens, our desire to people please, our desire to hide who we really are, and our tendency to put our self-worth, like, on other people and not take responsibility for it will all go down. We'll all go down a whole bunch. Just need to take action. Yeah, I mean, yeah, you're the only one that can decide to do it, but I think we're all would cheer you on for sure. I like how chat is all joining in. That's awesome. I'll just let you guys keep doing that. So just a couple more, like, quick things is that you, like, another thing to help is you can, like I said, set really clear priorities for yourself. Because when you keep saying yes to other people and to helping them with things, you're robbing yourself of really, really precious time. So if you have something that's super important to you that you just keep putting on the back burner, that's your problem. Like, you've done that to yourself. And the only person who can fix it is you. But by, like, reconnecting to why certain things are really important to you and deserve your time, that'll help you say no. And when you do say no, guys, don't give excuses. Like, you don't have to tell anybody why, especially if this is somebody who, like, just takes from you all the time. You don't have to give them excuses, because when you do, I'm sure you've experienced this, but it's like all of a sudden they've got wiggle room to manipulate you into saying yes. Like, they'll punch holes in your reasons. So you can just say, no thanks, I don't have the time, and just leave it at that. And if they keep pushing you, that's a really clear indication that, guess what? Stop helping this person. They're a jerk, right? Like, it's not going to be a great relationship with that person, most likely. Oh, and lastly, guys, a really helpful thing is, like, stall. When someone asks you to do something, just stall. Buy yourself some time. Say, I'd like to, but let me check my schedule and get back to you, right? Like, just whatever you have to do just to buy yourself time to get away from the situation and think it over. Like, check it with your priorities. Check it with your internal integrity alarm, right? Oh my God, that reminds me of Spaceballs when they have the Virgin alarm going off. Like, we have our own Virgin alarm. We have our own authenticity integrity alarm. But you need time, you need space to hear it and to understand it, especially if you've been ignoring it and like shutting it down for a long time. So stall. Just buy yourself that time.